and welcome to the Smart Recovery Podcast, where we offer thoughtful conversation about a variety of recovery topics. You'll hear self-empowering and science-based approaches to making changes toward a healthier and more satisfying lifestyle and building a life beyond addiction. Our mission is for every podcast to provide you with the information and resources you need to guide your own successful recovery journey. If you or someone you know needs addiction-related help, we encourage you to visit smartrecovery.org, where you will find practical tools, connections to support group meetings, and links for additional resources. Remember that the purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform. It is not a substitute for medical care from a doctor or other qualified addiction professionals. Before making any changes in your treatment plan, please discuss your thoughts with your medical provider. Now sit back and enjoy today's Smart Recovery Podcast.
Welcome to the Smart Recovery Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Frazier. Today on the program, we are going to speak with Eboni Jewel Sears. She is a SMART facilitator in Las Vegas, Nevada. She is also a peer recovery support specialist, and we'll get into some of that as well as some other professional background. But first, welcome to the program, Eboni.
Hello, excited to be here.
Yeah, and I was excited to hear you told me before we started that Las Vegas had some snow today. I'm going to come out and do some skiing.
Well, you're welcome. We'd love to have you.
Good. So let's start, and you can tell me your some of your educational and professional background.
Okay, great. So professional background, I've done everything. I was a truck driver, cross country for a little bit, for 13 years, actually. I was in the Navy. I was a builder in the Navy, and that took up a lot of my life. And right now, I'm a peer recovery support specialist at the Alternative Peer Group, Las Vegas. So I work with teens 14 to 19 in recovery.
Tell me, maybe this is jumping the gun a little bit, but do you use SMART recovery principles and practices in your work there?
Yes, only SMART recovery. I'm the only SMART recovery facilitator that works with the Alternative Peer Group. So I work with only the SMART recovery tools.
Okay, well, that's important to hear, because sometimes we know that treatment centers and support centers are very 12-step based, and
Right.
they may not even have someone who's conversant in 12-step, in SMART recovery.
Right. So I am definitely the black sheep here, and I'm okay with that. I do a lot of working with exchange vocabulary with the teens, and I think that helps to bridge the gap a little bit between what they learn in AA and what they learn in SMART.
Do your colleagues, they don't have a problem with you using SMART recovery? They're just not that familiar with it, or they don't actively, speak against it, I hope.
No, not at all. No, they invited me to come. They wanted SMART. And well, our main focus here is to keep the teens in recovery. And no matter what we need to do, we do. We use all modalities.
Yeah.
So the teens are the most important part, not so much the program here.
Yeah, that's one thing I certainly know about SMART and admire about SMART, is that it considers itself one of the multiple pathways to recovery. The 12-step, of course, is more well known, and when people hear recovery or support like this, they say, "Oh, you mean AA? You mean NA?" So it's nice that it is considered a multiple pathway and not frowned upon. I mean,
Right.
and by the same token, I don't think it's fair people in SMART recovery to frown on the other 12-step programs.
I don't think so either. I think that they can work well in conjunction, or separately. And also people have different periods in their life where one thing would work better than the other. So
Yeah.
I'm all for whatever works for the person.
Well, that's the ultimate goal, right? Is to stay in recovery, to stay building a better life, for sure. How did you find out about SMART recovery, and what were your initial kind of impressions?
How did I find out about SMART? So I honestly don't really remember. However, I feel like I just was Googling perhaps alternative recovery programs online. So I started with SMART in 2009, maybe 2010. And I don't remember any meetings being online at the time, but we had the chat room, And so I used to stay in the chat room. I used to make that my support system all those many moons ago.
Okay. So that was 2010, I think you said. How long till you decided to become a facilitator or become interested in being a facilitator?
In all honesty, I wasn't interested in being a facilitator. Um, so the executive director here, uh, heard me talk about SMART and asked me if I would become a facilitator. And I told her no, multiple times. And, I'd only ever been a participant. I'd only ever seen the world of a participant, only thought of myself when I was in the meetings. And so that was a far out idea. And then so I finally decided to at least take the course. I told her I would do that. And then once I took the facilitator course and saw what a difference that it could make, I was hooked at
Mm.
that point. But it
Oh,
wasn't altruistic at all. I had to be forced into it.
you know what? That's okay. I've gone into some good things that I was kicking and screaming to get into it initially, including my own recovery. I talk about my recovery here on this podcast, and I wasn't interested in recovery when right before I came in, but it became necessary. It became really important to change my life. So, what year was this when you finally ended up taking the training course and moving from there?
It was last year.
Mm-hmm.
So just recently, I finished the course in September.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually a new facilitator.
Yeah. And for folks who will hear this online at some different point, that was about 6 months ago. This is
Yes.
yeah. Okay. So
Yes.
that's enough to get your feet wet. What are some of the challenges you're finding in facilitation?
The biggest challenge that I have found is working with teens, and trying to figure out how to make learning the tools not seem like homework and making them fun. So I've had to cut and paste some fun things and some tool things, and I do a lot of it one-on-one. If they talk about like a problem that they might be having, and you know just drop in some elements of like dibs perhaps, but not calling it that.
Hmm. For
Uh,
those who don't know, tell us what DIBS is.
Disputing irrational beliefs.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Which
I
we
do.
have which we have plenty of, right?
Yes,
And
all of us
teens might
do.
too. Teens might as well.
Right, right.
You're listening to the Smart Recovery Podcast. Today, we're talking with Eboni Jewel Sears. She's a facilitator for Smart Recovery in Las Vegas, Nevada. She's also a peer recovery support specialist. She also has done, I think she said, about 20 different jobs, including long distance
Yeah.
truck driver and work in the Navy. And thanks for your service, by the way. When did you get out of the Navy?
Thank you for your support. I got out of the Navy in 2012.
Okay, so when you started in Smart Recovery, or at least using the chat rooms, you were
Mhm.
still in the Navy.
Yes, yes.
Was there anyone else in you were serving with that was interested in Smart Recovery?
I don't know. I kept all of that to myself. Um, it's interesting that my recovery started the day I joined the Navy, right? Or my abstinence did, let me say that. And it wasn't until I started with Smart Recovery that I realized that I was actually in recovery now. So I kept a lot of things to myself in the Navy.
Hmm.
Also LGBT.
Hmm.
And so that was a very unique time in the Navy before the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So,
Sure, sure. So that
yeah,
was the early 2000s and into yeah.
right.
Um, well, we were talking just before about you said working with teens and you try to make the tools and the use of the tools not like homework.
Mhm.
And so you kind of creatively, it sounds like, mix and match and make them engaging. I mean, what are some of the ways that you found successful doing that?
Well, uh, some things that I have done are like card games. We've played Uno, and if the Uno number and the color matched, then you had to read one of the unconditional self acceptance uh, affirmations that we came up with. And we've also done some cutting and pasting with, different unconditional life acceptance. I do a lot of the USA, UOA I guess ULA as well with them. I find that is where they need the most change.
Yeah.
Is
And again, for those who are listening, not everyone is going to be that familiar with
right.
SMART. Go through the ULAs, the unconditional. Go ahead. You tell me what
It's
you've. Yeah.
so unconditional self-acceptance, unconditional other acceptance, and unconditional life acceptance. So it's, just a couple of letters, but it's an incredible shift in thinking for a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
people.
Oh yeah. I mean that acceptance word. I mean you hear that throughout
Right.
the 12-step programs too.
Yeah.
Acceptance and the serenity prayer.
Right.
Accept the things I can't change. So, yeah, teens would have to really understand. It seems to me, it's been a long time since I was a teen, Ebony, but that things have to be accepted because you can't always change things.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's something that sometimes they feel like if their friends are doing it and offer them something, then they have to take it. Like I've heard that so many times that I have to do it if they're doing it. And just helping them to change that reality and
Yeah.
realize that they are in charge of their own lives.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on figuring out ways to keep the teens engaged and make it. Yeah, I mean that's important. I'll say it for just adults too. I mean, being interested in something, whether it's through playing a card game or some kind of, something that's stimulating, something that's fun, if you will. I mean,
Mm.
you have to have fun if you want to be in really sync with your recovery. I think. Do you agree?
I think it helps. Fun always helps.
Hmm.
And if I think it triggers something in your memory that you remember fun things more than not so fun things. So it always helps.
Yeah. So we've talked about becoming a facilitator and a little bit of the challenges you're facing with teens and making it, kind of stimulating. What are some of the rewards you've had or you've experienced being a smart facilitator?
Ooh, let's see. I think that it's really rewarding to be able to serve this community that I'm in, to be able to show teens that they're the master of their own fate, right? And then to empower them with the tools to be able to do that and to realize that living a balanced life is a possibility because sometimes they haven't seen that and they don't even know what it looks like or know what it looks like to not hold irrational beliefs as gospel,
Mm.
essentially.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, um,
When you say not having been used to seeing it, are you saying because of their backgrounds, of family backgrounds, or the communities they live in? What? How come they haven't seen that kind of
well, I can't speak for all of the teens, but a number of them come from households where, substance abuse is common. They might know more people that abuse drugs or alcohol than they know that don't.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's exactly what people experience, and then, like you said, if you don't know anything different, or you don't know something can be an alternative, then you don't necessarily seek it out.
right,
You know.
right.
Um, Talk a little bit more about you took a while to become or to agree to become a smart facilitator. I have this picture of your boss saying, "Now, Ebony, are you ready yet? Now, Ebony, are you going to do it
Yes,
yet?"
that's exactly what happened.
And then finally you decided to.
Right.
How quickly did you know that, oh, this is a good thing and I'm glad I did it?
It probably wasn't until it was over. I felt that, oh man, I felt that it was doing the facilitator training. Not only are you using the tools and learning how to show them to someone else, it was a personal journey for me as well, because it had been a while since I had gone through the entire handbook and done everything on a personal level and realizing how much of a different person I am now than I was, all those years ago before I was in recovery. Um,
Yeah, so it's a
so that,
journey of discovery.
yes,
At that different time, I appreciate that because we aren't the same people we were maybe when we started in recovery. I've been sober for 15 years, and I certainly am not the same person.
No.
So you go back and you might be reading literature. I've also done some SMART meetings. You're not going to have the same answers. You're not going to have the same response to a lot
Mm.
of those things. So
Right.
yeah, that's important. Um, and as far as your own experience, do you feel like sharing a little bit about your journey that led to you needing to be in recovery or wanting to be?
Sure. I don't know exactly what you might want to hear, but I'll tell you what life was like. So, my journey is with sexual maladaptive behavior. So, I just wanted to live a better life. I was tired of the, legal consequences. I don't know in the beginning if I was necessarily tired of the behavior. I just knew that living that life was really dangerous, and I have a daughter that was obviously younger at the time, and I wanted to make sure that she had a mother. Um, I wasn't thinking about myself really, but I decided to put that life aside when I joined the Navy. Well, I joined the Navy because I was trying to put that life aside. So once I was able to have some autonomy, you know, live on my own again and not, be in such a rigid environment because they do let us go home at the end of the day once once we start working. I realized, wow, I have to do this by myself. It's not just separate. I didn't get separated from the rest of the world. It's still here. And so that's when I found Smart Recovery. And I really fell in love with the tools.
Hmm.
And I wanted to be able to do something by myself and not have to speak to somebody else necessarily, because I just didn't want to talk to anybody else. I wanted to,
Yeah.
I wanted it to be a self-managed type of thing.
Hmm.
And I was able to do that. But lo and behold, I ended up talking to people for hours upon hours in the chat room
Hmm.
anyway. And it was nice to be able to be around others that knew what I was going through
Hmm.
and were very open because I'm not sure if they had the SMB, the sexual maladaptive behavior meetings at the time. I don't remember any meetings online necessarily
Hmm.
at
Hmm.
that time, but um, nobody was judgmental and everybody was welcoming. And anytime, what I appreciated as well was anytime I would use language that needed to be exchanged, people didn't have a problem with doing that. So it helped me to change my thinking by changing the words that I was using. And only the people in that environment were using positive words, really,
Hmm. Hmm.
and descriptors of ourselves. So um,
Yeah. Well,
I don't know what else.
no, you've identified two key concepts: stigma free,
Mhm.
that staying away from the labels, that it is about, what we're struggling with, not a label that identifies us differently than the person we are.
Right.
So you mentioned behaviors, which of course, smart, you can go to a smart meeting, be sitting there with someone who has a substance use disorder or maladaptive behavior or some kind of, other compulsive behavior. So those are two really important things about smart. And it sounds like that resonated with you.
It did. It resonated with me to the point where for the Smart Recovery Online, the national meetings, I actually do one on maladaptive behavior. So that includes everything that you just spoke about, really. And, the eating behaviors, the sexual behaviors, perfectionism, procrastination, those compulsions, self harm. So there's a place for everybody.
Yeah. And that I think is really different than some of the other experiences people have with a 12-step program. And that's why I was talking recently with someone and they said, if someone is saying that this other thing doesn't work for me, whatever it is, whatever other kind of recovery program, as long as they know that there is an alternative like SMART, they have a chance to really benefit from it. But if they don't know about SMART, then they might feel like they've hit a dead end. Do you find people who just didn't know about SMART until maybe you yourself or others let them know?
Yes, I was in it was a weekend seminar for the peer recovery support program, and there were probably 65 other professionals in the recovery community, and I was the only person that knew about SMART. And every single person in there does this for a living
Mm,
and, reaches out to people in recovery every day.
yeah.
So
Is that the state of Nevada, or that was like a regional or national?
it was for the city of Las
Oh,
Vegas.
city. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah, still a large metropolitan area. I mean, you would
right.
think there's definitely more, knowledge there, but now it's growing, and Ebony is it's leading the charge there. Is that how you now you the reluctant training facility, reluctant person to be trained, and now you are out front. Is that right, Ebony?
I well, maybe. I was um, we started off with one meeting, period. I think that had ever been in Las Vegas. That was an open meeting at least. There might be some closed meetings, but and now I do an open meeting. There's one in the town next to us, and there's a couple actually that we just started in I guess it would be high risk populations like the rescue mission, which is for people that are dealing with homelessness at the moment. And um, we just went into one of the recovery houses. So we're really excited about that. So it's a team of us
Sure.
that we're working to get it in Las Vegas. And we're also working with um, the school district here to bring SMART into there's a recovery high school, to
Hmm.
bring SMART into that recovery high school. So
Yeah. Well, that's good. It's spreading the word. It's also making sure people know it's an alternative. And sure, you already strike me as a collaborative person, so
yeah.
I wouldn't see you trying to get out there only by yourself. But um, well, talk to me a minute about any other. Were there moments when you said, I'm not sure being a smart facilitator makes a difference, or are you
Mm.
pretty convinced that it can?
I'll be honest with these kids, they can eat you alive. And I would leave many a meeting. I've had kids fall asleep in front of me, go behind the whiteboard and fall asleep. And,
Well,
that's what kids do.
teenagers, my teenager can fall asleep at the drop of a hat too. I mean,
Right. If they tune out, they might tune 100% out. There are times that I've left those meetings and said, okay, why am I doing this? Why am I bothering, putting this work in? And then I had to decide to take my ego out of it and realize that it wasn't about me or me having a good meeting. It was about continuously exposing these kids to this information again and again,
yeah,
whether they
well,
liked it or not.
it's the it's the repetition, and you don't know when or how it's going to get through.
Right. You never
Something
do.
you say, and that's what's important. You're listening to the Smart Recovery Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Frazier. Today we're talking with Eboni Jewel Sears. She's a smart facilitator in the city of Las Vegas. She has been many other things in her illustrious careers, including a Navy, a veteran, and she is also currently the peer recovery support specialist, working with I think you said 14 to 19-year-olds. Is that
Yes,
about
yes,
it?
14
Yeah.
and 19.
I'd like to go into something different, Ebony. You presented some ideas and issues on a smart Facebook thread. Would you like to talk about those, or is that something we should just skip?
Oh, no, I'll talk about it. I would love for you to ask questions about that
Sure, sure.
because I'm not sure what you would want to know.
Yeah. Well, I was looking at part of it. I don't know. I think this is the whole, at least one of the comments where you talk about, this idea that there's a Black History Month, and some of the ways that you thought people who are participating in the Facebook thread were not being necessarily, their voice wasn't necessarily being welcomed.
Right. Yes. Sometimes, as an African American, as a person that is brown or Black, we're silenced, you know? And I feel that people think that race or culture is just a belief system, like it's something optional that you can put to the side if you'd like. And what was important for me is to let people know that, that is who I am just as much as being a woman is who I am. And if it makes someone else uncomfortable that I am who I am, then that's their problem, not my problem. And we shouldn't have to be quiet about anything.
Mhm.
You wouldn't want to be silenced if you're speaking about recovery.
Hmm.
So we shouldn't be silenced about any other aspect of our lives.
Yeah, I think my experiences and people who do want to silence is because they have their own discomfort, their own fear about a subject or something that is maybe controversial,
Mhm.
and that's why they want to kind of shut it down. Is that how you see it?
Perhaps, sometimes people have a fear, sometimes they have a strong belief, to the opposite side. And then sometimes there are people that claim color blindness and that everyone is the same. And so therefore they don't want to hear about anything that's different. And being different is okay. You don't have to be blind, you can see it. And and it's fine. I don't understand. I couldn't tell you why people think that anything dealing with race should be silenced. For
Hmm.
me, it's not an option. I wake up every morning Black, so
Hmm.
I don't choose to, put that coat on every day or whatever.
Hmm.
So I can't not talk about it.
Right. Well, I really appreciate that. And I appreciate this kind of conversation because it does need to be brought out. I mean, SMART has to be a safe place for all participants. And, I was reading something recently talking about, human diversity and
Mm.
that we somehow label these others as someone, and this book was actually about mental illness and autism and, and disabilities of all kinds. But I read this phrase, I don't know if you've heard it. It said that people in wheelchairs aren't disabled if there's a ramp or an elevator.
Mm.
So the context is they're not disabled. They're only disabled when there isn't an elevator or a ramp,
Right,
you know?
right.
Um, Continuing along that line, this is Women's History Month,
Mhm.
and I believe that there aren't uh, women-only meetings in SMART. I think one is starting up actually.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts about the diversity of male, female, gender diversity in SMART recovery facilitation?
Well, I didn't notice that there was a difference until I went to a women's only meeting and realized how often we silence ourselves in meetings. And anything that has to do with gender will often be quiet about and not speak on if there are men in the room. And I'm excited that there's going to be a national women's meeting so that everyone can have a place where they feel comfortable to talk about whatever it is that they want to talk about, and not feel like they have to take a step back sometimes. I'm not saying all women do this, and I'm not saying that it's done all of the time, but very often, um, as women, we won't speak openly about women's issues with
Hmm.
men around.
Yeah, I mean that's the relatability. The different kinds of people who you can share so many experiences with, whether it's race, color, creed, gender, sexuality, orientation, any of that stuff is there may be times when you want to talk about things that are more resonant with those kinds of, people who share those traits.
Right. And it's also comforting to be in an environment where you don't have to explain things. You can just say what you need to say. And there's a underlying understanding
Mhm.
that makes things a lot more comfortable.
Sure. Smart Recovery was the beneficiary of a great training by the LGBTQ community here in Lake County, which is outside of Cleveland. And, even things that people didn't know about, like the use of pronouns. Well, why
Right.
should I use pronouns in my business signature? Because it's a signal. It's a signal to someone where you can say, "I understand it," or I'm not going to say I understand because that's way too far down the line. But I'm knowledgeable of, or I'm aware of something to do with.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you're right, it is a signal. And in the LGBT community, we're always looking for signals of safety. And that does show that, hey, I can talk to you, and I don't have to um, alter my words to make you feel comfortable. So,
Yeah, and the explaining, the
right.
explaining where you feel like, okay, can I make you comfortable with how I explain this?
Mhm.
And it's not my job to make you comfortable
No.
in a real, very much of a boundary. I'm not. People in the program, or I've thought this is so true for me, is that my first higher power was
Mhm.
your approval.
Mm,
That I wanted your approval so bad, I put it up on a pedestal.
mm.
And that's something that I've had to deal with, like we all have stuff to deal with over the course of our lives. um, in going back to your personal journey for just a moment, any other aspects of it that really were a part of smart being the best fit for you? Why do you think smart was the best fit for you?
It was the best fit for me because I was able to be myself. I didn't have to follow any course. I didn't have to believe anything in particular. I just got to work on me, and that's exactly what I needed to do in the beginning. And it was just very comfortable and supportive for me.
Yeah. And it leads to something that Smart's tagline, or is beginning to use more as a tagline: life beyond addiction.
Mm,
That we live life in a way and in a context beyond our substance use disorder, or
right.
behavioral compulsive. So do you think that's a good tagline, Ebony, a life beyond addiction?
Yes, I do. I didn't realize that there was a thing such as lifestyle balance until I heard that at Smart. My mother was prior service military, so we did things in a certain way. I was in the military, did things in a certain way, and um, thinking that anything should be different was frowned upon sometimes. And learning I could do or be who I wanted to, and these are the tools on how to get there. And um, I'm a tool person, so I always mention tools. But the lifestyle balance pie is one of my favorite tools because it allows you to see in which direction your life is going at the moment. And you might be okay with spending more time or more energy in a certain area than another, or you might want to be more balanced. So it could be balanced or unbalanced in the world, but whatever your version of balance is. Um, and to be able to be introspective and look at that um, was life changing for me.
Yeah.
So-
That's Ebony Jewel Sears. She is joining us today on the Smart Recovery Podcast, has been talking about her personal journey, about her work as a peer recovery support specialist, about becoming a smart facilitator, which I think you told me you jumped into right away. You only had to be
Right.
asked once. Is that?
No, 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 no. That's not
Oh,
what
that's
happened.
right. It was the opposite. I'm sorry.
Right.
The kinds of rewards and challenges she's had as a smart facilitator, and some of the ideas and issues about race and gender that even any group, including smart and Facebook threads, touch on and need to be struggled through. Really, I mean, is struggle the right word though? As we're beginning to wrap up here, that's something that just occurred to me. Is struggle the right word when we talk about these things?
I don't think so
Hmm.
because, so like I said, I'm in the LGBT community. I'm Black, I'm female, and I don't think I struggle every day. I'm just me.
Yeah.
So
No, I'm sorry. I'm going to interrupt. I was saying the struggle between people who can talk about it and who
mm,
don't want to talk about it and aren't comfortable talking about it. Is that where is that tension? I mean, is it a big struggle, or do you think it just, is something that just has to be dealt with?
just like anything in life, people have to be exposed to something that they don't know about. And I think it's important that people don't automatically jump on someone if they're using the wrong language or might not understand what's politically correct or might not understand a different culture. So I like to always sit back and watch a little bit to see what someone's intention is. Um, and that's what I go by. What are you trying to say? What are you trying to do? And some people aren't going to change, and that's okay. That's okay too, actually.
Mm-hmm,
I actually
hmm.
appreciate that sometimes, at least I know where you stand.
Right. Right. It doesn't become a thing that's hidden or obscured
Right.
in some kind of intentional way. Anything else, Ebony, you'd like to say about your experience with SMART or the kinds of things that you do at your work? Anything else we haven't covered?
Oh, wow. One thing that I wasn't sure about um, how it would be received is I'm a minister now, and I wasn't sure how SMART would take that. And no one has mentioned it or had a problem with it. And and for me, I feel very accepted in the SMART community, and I always have. And I hope to always feel the same way. I'm sure that I will.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. I actually, when I saw your email address, which
Mhm.
has REV in it, I
Right.
said, could that be a reverend? And then, of course, as part of my research on every podcast, I take a look at social media, and I saw that you had some things that seemed to indicate a religious view on
Mhm.
some of your social media. So I figured that might have been it, and I meant to ask about it. So thank you for for bringing it up. But
Mhm.
while we're there, isn't that just part of the multiple pathways? I mean, I know people in SMART who have a strong religious faith.
Right. Right. And I wasn't aware of that necessarily. Um, Probably because I wasn't looking. And I wasn't looking until I was looking. And then I noticed that nobody, like, I think people acknowledge it sometimes because I'm in my first year of ministry. And so right now I wear this clerical every day, and people just kind of look. Maybe someone will look sideways just to make sure it's not just a unique shirt that I like to wear often. And that's
Like
about
every
it.
day.
Right. They're like, "You wear this a lot." But, um, it's been no one's really no one's really paid any attention, to be honest.
Hmm. Hmm.
It is a big part of my life, and in all honesty, I find that SMART concepts fit very well into, spiritual concepts because unconditional self-acceptance, I'm I'm a different kind of Christian, so I have a metaphysical base as well. I'm a red letter Christian, and
What does that mean?
red letter Christians are those that follow the words of Jesus Christ in the Bible.
Hmm.
So some Bibles, it's written in red, and that's why they call us red letter.
Okay. All right. Did not know
So
that.
yeah. So just the gospels pretty much.
Yeah.
And unconditional self-acceptance. I feel like every religion has some version of that. And so it fits very well with the SMART ideology and
No,
concept.
certainly, certainly, and you mentioned the metaphysical approach. I also saw on some of your social media about the healing energy
Right.
of some of the things that you're involved in. That's
Right.
wonderful, and
Thank you.
I really congratulate you for taking that step and being
Thank you.
and being willing to take on new challenges because I think you said has been new for you.
Yes, within the last year. A lot of things happened in 2020. It was a year of change.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't good and not so good, and all
But
that
definitely
thing.
different.
Definitely different. Good. Yeah, we'll do an acceptance on this, Ebony. We'll do an acceptance.
Yeah.
That's Eboni Jewel Sears, and you've been listening to the Smart Recovery Podcast. My name is Luke Frazier. Ebony, thank you so much. Wonderful conversation. Thank you for making the time.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And this has been the Smart Recovery Podcast. If you're interested in more information about SMART, go to smartrecovery.org. Find us on social media and be involved with that. We're here regularly on the podcast. You can find more of those podcasts again at smartrecovery.org. Thanks for listening. Until next time, stay healthy and stay connected.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Recovery Podcast. Be sure to visit smartrecovery.org, where you can subscribe to our e-newsletter and check out additional podcasts, blogs, videos, and more. If you found today's podcast interesting and helpful, we encourage you to share it with others. You can also find information about SMART facilitator training and other ways to participate in our important work. To help us continue to provide recovery support to all the individuals who need us, please consider making a tax-deductible donation at smartrecovery.org/donation. or simply click the donate button on our homepage. Thanks again for listening, and we hope you'll join us for the next Smart Recovery podcast. Until then, stay safe and stay healthy.